Welcome to my video today. This is part 5 of my 7-part series where I'm talking about whether or not you can be a full-time reseller. I don't think I should really call it that. It's more about what happened to me and my transition from being a full-time employee at a job in corporate America to being a full-time reseller and then being offered a job. So part 5 is about the job offer and what did I have to do to make the decision about whether or not to take the job, because you should not, if a job offer comes your way, no matter if you like it, don't like it, I highly recommend that you walk through some of these steps and make sure that you are fully thinking about it, whether or not you make that decision. My name is Jocelyn. I call myself the PhD reseller because I have a PhD and I resell, and I want people to be informed, and I think that people need to be really informed about what it's like to be a full-time reseller, and particularly when you don't have any help. I don't have any help when you're going from a full-time job, when you are the breadwinner, there's nobody to help you out, and what that is actually like. So in part 4, I talked about the fact that I had got laid off from my corporate job back in February 2021. And I asked you to watch that video to talk about, what was it like? What were the good parts? What were the bad parts? And so this one is about the job offer. So I got an email from a recruiter, and I didn't apply for this job. They found me on LinkedIn. So part of the video I said was, I have my LinkedIn. The previous one is I have my LinkedIn open, ready. It's got my resume on it. It says I'm looking for a job all the time, because I'm always looking for a job. There's always something better out there. But they had contacted me, and I went through the whole job interview. And I will admit, I didn't really want it. Didn't really want the job. It was doing what I was doing before, which really I didn't really enjoy. It wasn't like it was enough money to live off of, but it wasn't anything that was where you're like, let me sign right now. Where do I sign the dotted line? But it did have some pros, right? It did have a full-time job, full-time benefits. I was going to now lose my unemployment, which, it wasn't paying that much anyways. But so if you're thinking about it when it's like, well, I'm getting a job offer and I really don't even really like it. And I wouldn't say like I didn't like it. It just wasn't what I envisioned for myself as a career, It was a job, and the way that I feel a job's a job. I don't go into jobs thinking, where is it going to advance my career? I just think about how in the world can I still go from a full-time reseller back down to a part-time, and how do I do it? Now, I will tell you that this job, the biggest thing that it had for me was that it was a full-time position, yay, and it was a permanent work-from-home position, which means that you're like, wow, I can work from home. I would never be required to go into an office again. That means that I can get up in the morning and I can do all my packing, and at lunch I can go and do my reselling. So it was basically what I had been doing for the last year. It was challenging. I want to admit to you, some days it was no lunches. Some days it was no breaks. When I am a trainer, and so when you're training people, you're with people all the time. And so, all right, let's go on a break. I'm on a break and I'm going and packing. So it wasn't the easiest thing to do. And there were some other things that was discussed, some other opportunities that was a little more aligned with what I wanted to do. But I still wasn't 100% sure. I wasn't 100% sure. So I said, well, I need to make this, see if this works. And I'm going to tell you something that you probably may or may not like to hear. You got to take the emotions out of it. You have got to take the emotions out of it. When I see people ask people about whether or not they should go do reselling, I see two sides. The people will do the more logical stuff. I'm not saying it's the smart stuff, so the more logical thing. You got to think about the money. You got to think about the benefits. You got to think about all those other things. Then you get the emotional people who say, well, if you keep working for somebody else, you'll never live your dreams, or you can make this work if you just work really hard, or your family needs you, and stuff like that. Those things should be thought together, but the logical needs to weigh out the more than the emotional. We all have times when we don't want to go to work, right? We don't want to go to work. We don't want to work a job, right? There are times when you don't want to list anything and want to go to the post office, but you do it anyways because we're adults and we're grown, and that's what we got to do. Adulting, or whatever the devil you want to call it. All right. So here are the things that I want you to consider. What I want to tell you first is caveat. You should never take my information as much more than just information based off of my experiences. Your decision to continue to be a reseller full-time, quit your job or something, has to do with a lot more than just what my perspectives are. I'm not going to be able to cover everything because certain things are going to be important to you that are not relevant to me. I don't have children, so spending time with children isn't going to be part of that equation for you. For me, it may be as relevant to you. But I think I'm going to give you enough information that you're going to make a better informed decision. And that decision might be, I'm going to be a full-time reseller, continue to be a full-time reseller, or I'm going to, quit my job, or whatever the case may be. So the first thing is you need to think about who will be affected by your decisions. Whether or not, and I'm talking about everybody, creditors, your credit report, your spouses, your significant other, your children, who's all going to be affected by your decision. And in particular, I'm talking about not going to working a full-time job. Even if you say, well, I make more money on eBay, okay, maybe you do, as long as you're looking at everything, the profit versus just the other stuff. Because what happens is, and I saw this person wrote this in a Facebook group, he said, I went full-time as a full-time reseller. Here's the issue. At some point, the stuff that you have is going to run out and you have to source. If you're using all of your money to pay the bills, there's no money to source. Let me break it down like this. Let's say you make $10,000 for the month, and let's say the $5,000 has to be to pay your bills. Okay, so you had a great month. You first start off, and usually that first month is really kind of odd, right? You put your best stuff out there, then as you go through, you're like, yeah, I guess I'll throw in this crappy shirt or something like that. But you put your best stuff out there. And so you say, I need $5,000. So you have $5,000 left over, and you have $5,000 to now invest back into your company. And you go into the next month. You still need the $5,000, right? And you went out and bought $5,000 worth of stuff. And then this month, you only made $5,000. And you're like, okay, now I have $5,000 that I need to pay the bills. Where is the money going to come to source? And people are like, and when you're like, I don't want to put any money on my credit card. I don't want to dip into your retirement. Don't do that. I don't want to borrow money. So what do you do? So at sometimes when people just look at it as the money wise, like this is how much I'm making and this is how much I was making at my job. I make more money doing this. At some point, you're going to have to figure out how much do you really need to live off of, and are you making enough money to live off of? So that's just the caveat that I want to put out there. Like I said, this is going to be a little bit long, so I find it to be hard. Second thing is find a neutral person. It doesn't have to be a negative Nancy. Don't talk to somebody who's like, girl, you can't, man, boy, you ain't going to do nothing. You ain't ever going to be shit. You're not gonna make this work. You just need to go back and work a full-time job. This is the second job thing you've been trying to do. Don't talk to that person. But don't also talk to the person who's just, yay, of course, you can do it. You can do anything you want to. You know what they say. If you do what you love, you're going to make lots of money. You're going to be successful if you just do exactly what you love. So make sure you find someone who's neutral that can give you some insight. Have you bounce off some ideas. Have you think about things that you may not have thought about. Maybe there's something in your past that you didn't think about. Maybe there's a bill that you're like, and they say, did you remember that? And, oh, dang, I forgot about it. So have somebody to bounce off of this. Number 3, what is your reselling business look like today? And I have seen far too many people who choose to quit their job and they haven't even spent a month reselling, or they decide not to go back, and they'll say things like, hey y'all, I just quit my job And people are like, oh great, you're going to follow your dreams. I usually say, how long have you been doing this? I haven't started yet. Can you get your job back? But another thing that people will do is they'll say, well, I've got a thermal printer, I've got some labels, I've got some boxes. Now what do I go do? Get your job back. Sorry. I hate to say this, but most full-time resellers don't start off going full-time from working a full-time job to doing this full-time, because there is a lot to learn about this business, like any business. I encourage you to go watch Kitchen Nightmares by Gordon Ramsay. And he would go to these restaurants, and they would be failing. And I'm not saying you're going to fail. Please believe me, I'm not trying to say you're going to fail. I'm just saying it's going to be a lot harder to be successful. And because there's a lot of people that do. There are a lot of people, but it's harder to do. It's just harder to do. And we want to set you up for success, because being a full-time reseller is hard as it is. And you add in a piece of icing that's even harder. It's like a big old clunking mess of ganache or something, and you're like, I can't even, or what's that, whatever, and you're like, I can't even slice through the cake because it's got so much of this brittle thing on it, or it's old, and you know what I'm talking about. I'm getting way off. I think it's because I need some lunch. Anyways, he would ask these questions a lot, which was, have you ever managed a restaurant? No. And the purpose of the TV show was that he was helping people whose businesses were not doing well. And it was about restaurants. And he would ask, have you ever managed a restaurant? No. Have you ever cooked in a restaurant? No. Have you ever worked in a restaurant? No. Why did you think you're going to run a restaurant? What was my lifelong dream? It was what I always wanted. And we don't have Gordon Ramsay or Gordon eBay or anybody to come in and swoop in and help you out. That should be a show. We should do a show like that. Anybody want to do a show? Could be a great show. The resellers' nightmare, getting them out of stuff. There's nobody that's going to, and a lot of people don't have that. You know, those are 12 shows over a year, 24 shows over a year. You don't have those sorts of things. So if you have not started yet, you have no clue what you have, right? You could have some great, fabulous things, and you could be making $50,000 a year, $60,000, or you could just have stuff that is a little bit slower to sell. Maybe it's all vintage. Maybe it's just lower priced items, bread and butter, that you are going to have to do a lot more work to get there. So I would definitely say, if you have never been a reseller before, I would highly recommend not quitting your job before you do it for at least a month, so you can see what it's actually like. You just know trends better. You know, if you've been doing it for a year, you're just like, there's a guy who comes every single month on a Walmart seller. I don't know, I haven't had bills in 3 days. And I'm like, dude, chill. Or you tell people, and they're like, why haven't I got any sales? And it's like, okay, most full-time resellers, or people have been, not full-time, but people who have been doing this a while, can list about 10 things why. And it's like, no, because they're looking at the economy, they're reading trade stuff, they're looking at YouTube, they're looking at stuff. It's not just, and they're looking at things as a whole, right? They're not just saying, okay, you know, April's kind of bad, and they've cushioned themselves a lot to make sure that when those slow months are here, that it's not so hard. All right, so let's go back to, I hope I haven't depressed you yet. Number 4, what is your other sources of income? A lot of full-time resellers have somebody who has a steady income. A lot of full-time resellers have somebody else in the household who has a full-time job that is not reselling. Now, I know there's a lot of couples that do this, and I've seen those, and they're really awesome. But have you noticed they transition? They go from being, this goes back to the third one, they go from having a job to now going full-time. And they're both on the same track. If your husband or your wife's not into it, you know, it's like, you know, you gotta do what you gotta do, right? So let's start talking about what are the things that you need to look at. Number 5, your household budget monthly. And I divide these up into security debts, necessities, unsecured debt. So the first thing is the secured debt, which is the things that if you do not pay the bill, that they can come and take your property away from you. Or, oh, you want to say hello? Want to say hello? Say hello. Hello. This is Georgiana. So the first one is the secured debt. So they need to look at the biggest thing most people have is the mortgage or the rent. If you don't pay the rent, you can get evicted. And I know there's moratoriums and stuff like that, but you don't want to be in that situation if you can avoid it. And I know there's mortgage relief, and that can be a nightmare as well. It's not as easy as you think it is. But you want to pay those bills, because if you don't pay the mortgage or the rent, you lose your roof over your head. And then it don't matter how much crap you got listed on eBay. If you ain't got if it's on the street and people are picking it up because you got thrown out or foreclosed on or evicted, it doesn't matter. The other one is your vehicle, right? Your car. If you don't pay the note, they're gonna come and repossess it. And you don't want those sort of things on your credit report, right? The second thing you want to be worried about is the necessities: food, water, electricity, insurance. And insurance, I'm talking about like home insurance. We'll talk about the other insurance later. Homeowners insurance, renters insurance, car insurance. You don't want to drive a car without insurance. Turning the electricity on, the power, the water, the internet. You need internet. Sorry, you're going to need internet. I know people try to do stuff off of their phone a lot, but if you're going to ramp this up, you can't live off of your phone. It's really hard to do this just solely working off your phone or your tablet. And then food and water. The third thing to worry about is those unsecured debts, which they can still go after you. These are mostly things like your credit card that you can discharge in bankruptcy, but you really don't want to. But it can ruin your credit, and that includes things like medical bills. You can discharge those in bankruptcy, and there's credit cards. And then the other types of debt that you may have, it might be personal loans that you owe to people. You know, if you owe someone a lot of money and you decide, I'm going to quit my job and go do this, that's not right. They loaned you the money. You should, at least try to figure out how to pay that debt maybe first before you actually go. And so, I don't know, sometimes you don't have a choice and you got laid off, but if that's the case, you should still be looking for a job, because you owe people their money. And student loans, right? You can put student loans in default and forbearance and all sorts of things. And my friend keeps asking me, when's Biden going to get rid of student loans? That's not going to happen. I don't see it ever happening. And you need to start paying on them and figure out how to get rid of them versus that. So those are the debts that I was looking at. And I have all of those. I have student loans. I have a mortgage. I have all of those things. Luckily I don't have any medical bills, but I do have credit cards, right? That's what I do have. The next thing you want to look at is 6. So I'm like, all right, Jocelyn, you're depressing me. Well, I know. Number 6, where can you make cuts in your budget? Live off the basic stuff. I did things like I cut off the gym. No gym. You're like, you don't look like you go to the gym that much. I know, right? But no gym. No pedicures, no manicures, no massages, no foot rubs, no nothing. I just have the internet and then the streaming stuff that I do, right? So some stuff I prepay, or they with the Amazon Prime. I cut out Amazon Music. I'm not at the gym anymore anyways, so I cut out the extra Amazon Music. I cut out the Kindle subscription. Any other activities you want to go out? No, I ain't got no money. Sorry. No. You want to go out to eat? I looked at the thing that I spent the most on. I didn't buy anything. I don't really buy a lot of clothes. I don't need it. I don't need a lot of stuff. But I do like to go out to eat. And I realized I was spending a lot of money on Uber, right? Unless I have a coupon, I don't use Uber, and I might use them maybe once a week, and I go out once a week. But this is a lot different from probably 4 or 5 times a week. So I had to make sure I cut things. No vacations, limit your excursions. I know it's hard when you're like, I want to go do stuff, cut out extraneous activities. And this is the part where I say you need to have conversations with everybody that's going to be involved in this. Because if all of a sudden you just say, hey kids, I'm going to stay home. Yay, great. And then they come to you and say, hey, the summer camp that I love going to is open again. I don't have any money to go. I can't send you. Why? Well, I'm a full-time reseller. We got to make some cuts and some budgets. You were really excited about me taking time off, so I don't know. I'm being facetious. That's not really how you talk to your children. No, I hope not. But that sort of thing, right? You have to make sure that everyone is on board. And if it's something that's really important for somebody or something for you, let's say you're like, they're a gymnast and they're going to gym camp, and you don't want to cut them off right when they're getting good. You want to be like Simone doing all kinds of stuff, right? So you have to think about cutting stuff, and it might be you need to cut more than everybody else. So if you're like, well, I have to have this, no, this is your choice to make. So the person that needs to cut the most is going to be you. Now, if you're single and you're like, I don't have to worry about anything, and that's completely different, but you still have to cut, right? You still have to make cuts. The next thing, seventh thing, is replacement of the benefits that are offered through your job. Everyone thinks of the first thing of health insurance. And I believe the Biden administration is supposed to be taking over on COBRA, that sort of thing. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if that's true or not. Go find that out. You can go and get insurance through the health care market exchange, etc. Those are the things that are offered to you. So health insurance. Do not listen to people who say, I just go around. I try not to. Watch again, Dave Ramsey. 90% of his calls are about having medical bills to pay. You don't want to avoid going to the doctor because you don't have insurance for something that, if you don't get taken care of, gets festered even more. Like if you have some kind of chronic illness and you're on some kind of medication, you don't want to say, well, I'm not going to take my meds and then end up in the hospital and $10,000, $20,000 in debt because you didn't pay for $200, $300, $400 of insurance so you could buy your medication, right? Health insurance. The second one, people don't think like that's dental insurance. We never know you never know. Sometimes it's coming up, you're like, man, I feel the tooth feeling kind of horrible. And dental insurance, it may not be as important as health insurance, but we all know dental insurance will help cover for crowns and root canals and things of that nature. What's a root canal? What's a crown these days? $1,200? Right? So $1,200 for a crown, $800 for a root canal, $800 for the root canal, and then another $1,200 for the crown. So you're talking $2,000. And you might get on some things, and there's care credit and those sorts of things. Now, what I want you to do is you can, through COBRA, extend those benefits for you, and some of these benefits you can carry on through, but just understand that you're going to be paying the full price, 102%. And you'd be really surprised if you've never had COBRA. You'd be very surprised. I think the last time I had COBRA, the medical was $686 for a PPO plan. It's very expensive. Another one is vision, and I wear glasses, so sometimes it's like, hey, if you're going to quit your job, prepare before. Go get you some glasses. If you got vision insurance, go to the dentist. Get everything done. That would be a much easier thing if you're like, I may not be able to afford this type of insurance. But we know how kids are. I mean, I got a chipped front tooth because I decided to try to impress a boy, jumped off a diving board, I did a belly flop, did this, and scraped my tooth onto the bottom of the concrete pool and chipped my tooth, right? And then, so that took time and money to go do all of those sorts of things, right? So you don't just think about yourself. If you can transfer them on, and if you decide to leave your job for whatever reason, that whether you lost your job or fired from your job, it is a qualifying event. So if you have somebody else that you can now transfer those benefits onto, that would be ideal. The other one is life insurance. Your jobs, most full-time jobs offer life insurance as part of your benefit package. Most times like $25,000 basic life insurance, and if you want to add more, you add on more. Life insurance is extremely, extremely important. God forbid something happens to you and you pass away. As much as you may have a thriving e-commerce business, when you're dealing with death, nobody wants to be bothered with that mess right now, right? They might just say, and we've seen it all the time, some people are like, this is what he loved, I'm going to put it away for 6 months or a year. They close everything out. And then you're gone, your business is gone, and then they're left with nothing. So make sure you have enough life insurance to make sure they're covered for however long that is. That needs to be discussed between you and maybe your financial advisor. The last one is disability insurance. A lot of times your job will have short-term or long-term disability. Either one, I think usually long-term is usually covered. And remember, your job has workers' comp. That's required. Most jobs have the legal stuff, whatever. If you get injured on the job, there's the workers' comp. But if you get injured, you fall down the steps, you break your leg, who's going to run that for you, right? If you fall down and break your leg at home and you can't work because you can't drive yourself to your job because your right leg's broken and that's what you used to drive, you can take disability even though you got injured at home. It don't matter where you got injured at. When you don't have disability insurance, that if you fall down and break your leg, you're like, I can't go to the post office, I can't get up, I can't do anything. And now everyone, if you have a family, they may be able to help you out a little bit, but at some point they're like, I can't take care of you and can take care of the business and try to take care of the family and try to work myself because you are now no longer working. So those are the type of insurances that I really want you to think about replacing if you can. The next part is saving for the future. I know it's hard when we're just like, it's right now, if I can I'm going to put everything into what I'm doing and then I'm going to worry about things a little bit later. And that can be true, but I want you to at least think about those when you're thinking about how much money you need at least a minimum to do this full time. So general savings, are you putting money in a general savings account, putting money away? I was not, because I was putting most of my money back into the business. Remember, like I said, at the beginning of the video, you're going to put a lot of money into your business. But now I'm able to put a little bit less money in the business and start stocking them away into some more savings accounts, starting back up some retirement accounts, those sorts of things. Medicare, Social Security. If you watched the video when I said you don't have to pay taxes, FICA. If you make sure, you can go to like Social Security, check my SSI or something like that to see if you have been invested enough to where you would get Social Security and Medicare. There has been, in Georgia, there was an article a while ago about people who were getting into retirement age, and because they were working for a small business for their entire life, a lot of farming, that their companies were not paying into Social Security and Medicare. It is not a guarantee that you get 65 and you get it. You get it if you put into it. And because they hadn't put into it, now they've worked their whole entire life and they go to the Social Security office and they're like, where's my check? And they're like, you didn't put into Social Security. There's nothing for you to withdraw. And now they're 65. They don't have Medicare. They don't have a check. They have nothing. So just make sure, and I mean, if you don't understand a lot of those stuff, go to, there's a lot of people that will watch some YouTube videos, but, you might want to go talk to a financial advisor. And don't buy you don't have to buy anything, but, just maybe think about talking to somebody before you make that decision. If I'm telling you stuff that you're like, I don't know what the devil you're talking about, like I said, I'm telling you some stuff that I'm doing that I had to go through before I made the decision about whether or not to stay full-time or to go on. And these were the things where I said, how much am I going to put in? How much am I going to do anything? Other things to think about for the future, college funds. Or do you have enough money to send your kids to college? Please, please, please don't say, well, I'm going to use my kid's college fund, or I'm going to back down and the kids are just going to go somewhere. Those are the conversations you need to be having with your kids. Things regarding anything new. Are you going to need a new car? Are you running on, is the car breaking down? Does the car need car maintenance? Does your cats need their teeth cleaned? Do they need surgery? Do any of those sorts of things? Is your leak roofing? What are some of the things that you may have been putting off that you're like, I gotta get taken care of? And that could really put you in a detriment when you are going to go and look at these sorts of things. The last thing is if you're going to move. Unfortunately, having a full-time, fortunately or unfortunately, having a full-time job is much easier to qualify for any rent or to qualify for a mortgage. If you've now quit your job, or you don't go back and find another job, and you're like, well, we're going to move anyways, and you try to go move, you might find it really hard to qualify for a mortgage. And unless you pay your house off, unless you like, I don't need a mortgage, you know, you pay, you have the equity in your house and you use that to pay for the house in cash. That's completely different. But if you're renting, they're like, no. And I've seen this before, where people are like, I make money, but the people who are renting that I want to rent from, and these are just, you know, standard folks, are like, no, we want a regular check, or you have to figure out how to give yourself a check and stuff like that. So it can become much of a nightmare. So what are you going to do? So this is what I did. I listed everything. I wrote down every bill that I had, all those bills. It took some time. And I actually, when I got the call, I was in a rush, because I said it was coming up on the weekend. So I said, give me 24 hours. So I was doing this all day. But luckily, because I was just finished working on my taxes, I keep every receipt. And every year I do this. I say, how much money am I spending on something? How much money am I spending on the power bill? How much spending on water? Things of that nature, to see how I can cut those back. But also to see how much money do I actually need to live off of, reselling or not, because that's just something that we want to do. But oftentimes it's everything's on auto pay, and we pay it off, and it's kind of like, we don't want to do. Take your bills and then look at how it costs to replace all of those things, like all those benefits that I was telling you about. And then look at the things it takes you to run your business, and how much more you are going to need. What kind of space are you going to have? How much are you having now, and how much more are you going to need? So what I mean by this is, let's say your bills are $10,000 a month. Let's just say $10,000. And let's say you find, I'm using big numbers. And let's say to add in all those extra things to replace practically dollar per dollar, maybe 50%, 50 cents on the dollar, all those extra benefits is another $5,000. And let's say you now say, okay, in order for me to at least live, no crazy things, no vacations, no anything, just the stuff that we need to do to maintain our life, I need $15,000. Then you go to your business and you say, how much am I making per profit in my business? Not sales, profit. And if you're not doing that, then you really need to start looking at that as well. How much are you making per profit? If you're like, okay, I'm making $10,000, so you say, okay, well, I need to somehow come up with $5,000 more dollars. And that'll help you out to figure out, because if the person is calling you and you're like, well, you know, and this is a job offer, and you start comparing, you're like, okay, the job is offering $15,000 a month with full benefits, and I don't have to pay for all those other stuff, but I'm only making $10,000 right now. I need to come up with an extra $5,000. You know, so those are the things that you have to think about. It's like, and honestly, it was just a dollar amount. That was what I said. I looked at it as, how much is this job paying? How much am I making right now in my reselling business? How much do I need? And if I was to go on, what do I need in order to boost that business? Could I? Because I've already told you in the last video, I said sales increased, but it was very much like a faucet. It wasn't a fire hose. It was a faucet, where it was like, it was trickling up and up and up. But, you know, I also thought about other things, right? I know that once I go back, I'm not going to be able to ramp up that e-commerce business as best as I was doing before. I'm going to go back to my lesser numbers, which was back in January and December. I'm not going to have that increase. I'm tired. You know, I'm tired of every day waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning to do stuff. I miss going and having my days off to do exactly what I want to do. And so it wasn't a black and white thing. There was a lot of colors to that rainbow, to making that decision about what I wanted to do. So you're ready to make a decision. And so those are the things that you need to think about. If you're currently working, I would say, you know, take a week. Take 1 or 2 days. If you are working and you're like, maybe I should do this, I'm not quite sure, to take a week off. Take a vacation from your job, because you can't take vacations as is when you first get started. You're not going to. So take the week off from vacation and hit it hard and see what it's like. See what it's like, right? Just see what it's like. See if you can do this, see how much money you're going to make off of this, and see how it works. But just remembering stuff like, at some point, do you have the money to start investing back into your business? Your first month is typically sort of like your kind of your star month. You tend to list the best stuff that you have at your house, and then take 1 or 2 days off. It doesn't have to be a week, 1 or 2 days, or say the weekend, and see what that's like. I understand. So those were everything that I had. I said, give me 24 hours. I went through everything. And I went down, and I went, and I went, and I went, and then I made a decision. So part 6, I'm going to tell you my decision about whether or not I'm still a full-time reseller, or did I actually go back to job. Alright, see you on the next time.